Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Albert Einstein. You might recognize the name from textbooks, posters, or maybe one of those cartoons with the crazy hair. But forget the cliches for now. I want to speak to you directly like two human beings trying to make sense of the universe together. This is not a history lecture, it's a story. My story. And if you stick with me, I promise it won't be boring. I want to share how I came up with some of the most out there ideas in physics, what drove me to keep questioning everything, and what I think I'd be doing if I were alive today in your world of smartphones, AI, and space tourism. Let's rewind to the beginning. I wasn't born a genius. In fact, I didn't even talk until I was almost 3 years old. People thought I was slow, but I was just thinking. Constantly thinking. I'd look at simple things like a compass and get lost in thought for hours. That compass was one of my earliest memories. The needle moved as if by magic, always pointing in one direction. But there were no strings, no wires, nothing I could see. That invisible force completely blew my mind. It made me realize that the universe was full of things we couldn't see. But they were there, working, guiding, shaping reality. That one little object planted the first seed of curiosity that would stay with me for life. School, though, not so inspiring. The education system back then was rigid and unimaginative. They didn't want thinkers, they wanted repeaters. I got in trouble for asking too many questions, for thinking too abstractly. I didn't hate learning. I hated school. There's a difference. I craved understanding. I read far beyond the curriculum. Books on math, physics, philosophy. I'd daydream in class not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. Just not about what they were forcing down my throat. Now fast forward a few years, I finished university barely, and then nothing. Nobody wants to hire me. I apply to every teaching job I can find. No replies. So I end up working at a patent office in Switzerland. I'm reviewing inventions all day, mostly boring electrical devices, but in a strange way, it's perfect. The job gives me time to think. My mind is constantly spinning. And here's where it gets interesting. Every day I walk home and wonder, what is light? How does time work? If I could ride on a beam of light, what would I see? Would the wave freeze? Would time stop? These weren't just cute questions. They became my mental playground. I started doing what I call thought experiments. Pure imagination, backed by logic. And after years of this, one night in 1905, while sitting alone in my tiny apartment, I realized something that changed everything. If the speed of light is always constant, then time and space must be flexible. I know that sounds like science fiction, but hear me out. You're probably used to thinking of time as this fixed thing, ticking the same for everyone like a giant universal clock. But what I realized is that time is relative. It can stretch and squish depending on how fast you're moving or how close you are to a massive object like a planet. Time actually flows differently for different people depending on where they are and how they move. That's what became known as the special theory of relativity. That year, 1905, people later called it my miracle year. I published 4 papers in 1 year, and each one shook the foundations of physics. One of them introduced E equals mc squared, which means energy and mass are the same thing, just in different forms. A tiny bit of mass can become a massive amount of energy. You've probably heard that equation 1,000 times, but to me it was a revelation. It was the universe whispering, hey, you're getting warmer. But I wasn't doing this from a big lab with a team of scientists. I didn't even have access to the latest research equipment. I had a desk, a pen, a brain that wouldn't stop asking questions, and a habit of walking alone for hours thinking in silence. That's it. It still blows my mind that the ideas that came from those silent walks would one day be used to power nuclear energy. And yes, sadly, also nuclear weapons. When I realized my theories had contributed even indirectly to the atomic bomb, I was devastated. I had written to President Roosevelt during World War II warning that Nazi Germany might be working on nuclear weapons. I felt I had to act. But when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, I felt sick. I was a physicist, not a killer. I had wanted to understand the beauty of the cosmos, not break it apart. If I were alive today, I think I'd be deeply involved in a few major things. First, climate change. It's the existential crisis of your generation. I'd be using every ounce of influence I had to push for clean energy, rational policy, and responsible tech. You cannot claim to be an advanced civilization while burning your planet like a matchstick. That's not progress, that's madness. Second, artificial intelligence. This is a new kind of mind, and you're building it rapidly, faster than you're figuring out how to control it. I'd be urging the world to slow down, to ask deeper questions about what it means to be human. Intelligence is not just about processing power, it's about values, compassion, responsibility. Don't repeat our mistakes by creating something smarter than you before you figured out how to be wise. Third, education. I'd be building tools to make science feel like play. When I imagined relativity, I didn't start with numbers. I started with pictures in my head. Riding light, stretching clocks, bending space. That's how kids think naturally. So why do we teach them with dry formulas and stress? I'd make VR labs, interactive games, and yes, probably a science YouTube channel called Relatively Speaking. I'd try to make curiosity cool again. And maybe I'd go viral once in a while for dropping a quote like, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing." Because that's the truth. The people who change the world aren't always the smartest. They're the ones who stay curious the longest. The ones who don't stop at the first answer. The ones who stay up late asking what-if questions even when the rest of the world is asleep. So, if you're still listening, here's what I want you to remember. You don't need to be a genius to be a thinker. You don't need to ace your exams to be a revolutionary. What you need is a question that won't leave you alone. A puzzle that gnaws at your mind. A hunger for understanding that won't shut up. That's how ideas are born. Not with magic, but with obsession. I'm not here to be a hero. I made mistakes, I doubted myself, I got things wrong. But I never stopped wondering. And if you can do that, if you can hold on to your wonder, even when life gets messy, then you too are capable of something extraordinary. Thank you for letting me share this little time warp with you. I hope I've inspired you to think differently about time, space, the universe, and maybe even yourself. Until next time, keep your mind open, your questions loud, and your curiosity infinite. Before you slingshot out of here faster than the speed of light, go ahead and hit that like button. It's like giving this video a little extra kinetic energy. Boom. Momentum. Drop a comment below with your wildest thought experiment, or just say, "Time is weird," if you felt that. I read them all with quantum focus. And of course, smash that subscribe button like it's the Big Bang. Because this channel, it's expanding faster than the universe, and you don't want to miss what's next. Stay curious, stay weird, and remember, even time bends for those who think differently.